1935, the Lions win the NFL championship. The Detroit Tigers take the World Series. The Red Wings bring home Lord Stanley's Cup. Joe Louis begins his rise to world domination. This transforms the Motor City into Detroit, City of Champions.
And that is it. With the crack of the bat, we are off and running. It should be a starter's pistol for these guys.
Yeah, it should be.
It's Detroit City of Champions, a podcast, and just going through all the stories of 1935, the amazing accomplishments of some astounding athletes of all makes and models.
All from the same season, too, man.
Yeah.
That's what's crazy. It's like never-ending content because that's how big this season was.
Yeah, and then there's side stories. There's stuff that we didn't get to in each and every story.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And there's stuff that we can circle back to.
Yeah.
And then special days and anniversaries and birthdays and
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff to cover. And we're going to do it. I'm Jamie Flanagan.
Charles Avison.
And thank you for joining us. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, collect, follow all those podcast things and all the podcast places. Thank you for being with us. Do smash that like button.
Yeah, share it. Every comment, every like, every little
Smash
yeah,
that
we don't
button.
yeah, we're every little thing really helps. We really
It does.
appreciate
And-
every
and-
we're like we got another comment.
Yeah.
We got another subscriber.
I love it's astounding when we've mentioned a bunch of family members and relatives connected to the story. Mentions like, oh my gosh, no one ever tells us a story, and it's like we know that's why we're doing it
Exactly.
and it's absolutely our honor to do so. It's my honor to hear you tell the stories, Charles, because you've done so much research on this, and I love putting it together and helping out as much as I can, and you do some astounding
Well, it's
work.
my honor to work with you, Jamie, as usual, man. This show wouldn't even be going on if it wasn't for you. You do all the production, you do all the work. I work for 4 or 5 hours, pre-show to get ready for it, but you do all the work in between the shows, and I'm grateful for it. I find myself kind of running behind on getting you stuff that you need and stuff. I'm like, I'm busy.
Hey,
man.
it's the story's been baking for how many years?
Yeah, but still, there's more I could. I'm grateful for the work you do on the show.
Yeah.
So
And I love the stories because we hit the big three and the next two, Hagen and Garwood, and but we're moving into some of the other champions, and we're talking about Eddie Tolan. I love that Eddie went to Cass Tech, and because this is the Detroit City of Champions. So where else would he have gone to high school?
Absolutely.
Right. So, but I love the little team picture, and it's like, oh my God, Cass Tech, and it's like, So I love that. So other champions, but part of Eddie's story. You said there was another guy. He went to Michigan, and was an astounding runner.
Yeah, so what we're talking about today is I call this a special episode because the guy we're talking about today, his name is Willis Ward.
Yeah,
and Willis Ward, he wasn't necessarily a champion in 1935. But he's contemporary with 35. You're going to see there's all kinds of stuff. This is his era.
Sure.
And
he was on the track with
he's a major figure, and Willis Ward is like I told myself when I was doing the books, when I was writing about Eddie Tolan, that's when I really came across him. I'd never heard of him before I was looking into Eddie Tolan. And when you're like, you're reading about Eddie Tolan, you're putting a story together, and it's impossible not to see like in the same galaxy of stardom is circulating Willis Ward. You've got your four major like sort of track stars of this era.
Yeah.
Were Eddie Tolan, Jesse Owens, Ralph Metcalf, and Willis Ward. These are your four like sensations of this like sort of era.
Right.
And Jesse Owens has got of course Jesse Owens was Jesse Owens. Everybody knows about him.
So he came up last week, and there was a picture of Eddie with Jesse, and Willis was in the photo
and Willis
as well.
Ward, yeah. And so that shows three of the main stars of that era. Ralph Metcalf, of course, is the other guy, and he was he raced against Eddie Tolan, and he finished second to Eddie Tolan in the 32 Olympics, and he finished second to Jesse Owens in the 36 Olympics. So Ralph Metcalf was always there.
Is that him on the podium there?
It is.
Okay.
To winning that silver.
Right on.
And he was the guy that was like right with the finish with Eddie Tolan, and that like where they both set the exact same world record, but Eddie Tolan won the race.
The photo finish that got our video banned on
Did it
YouTube.
really?
YouTube does a pretty cool thing though.
Because I saw the alert saying you got flagged. We got flagged.
Yeah,
for the listener at home, we got flagged by YouTube. We have you know what I mean?
Because we played the minute
yeah.
and a half video of the photo finish, and it played it over time. And so we played it in its entirety. So that would be an episode. That was the first one. That's part 1 of Eddie Tolan. So that's 2 episodes back. If you go into the show notes, the link to the video.
Did you have to remove it, or did we still get to use it?
I removed the video. Yeah.
Oh, did you?
So,
okay.
and it's neat. YouTube says, "Here's your offending section is from here to here. Would you like to remove that
piece?"
It's
exactly.
And you just click yes, and it YouTube extracts.
Oh, really?
It for you.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I had already downloaded it, edited. I edited it out, and I was going to re-upload it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, I'm going to go in and look and see what this is, and YouTube did it for me. I was like, oh, crap.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Well, it's all over YouTube. It's not hard to look up the
right. But the link is in
finish.
there.
Good.
So if you want to see that, go 2 episodes back. And that photo finish, just amazing.
And there's also a little, Ralph Metcalf and
Metcalf.
Eddie Tolan, the 1932 Olympics photo finish. It was the first instant replay in the Olympics for track and field, where they had to go to the video to watch to play it.
We're talking about Willis today.
When I was doing the book originally, I promised myself,
Willis Ward.
I was like, if there's ever any way to talk about Willis Ward, because I put a picture of him in the book with Eddie Tolan. Because in the book, you're working with parameters. You know what I mean? You're dealing with there's so many champions, there's so many stories, there's so many players.
And the thing with print, there's only so many column inches.
Exactly.
To work with.
The book was the second and third book were a total of, I think it was 750 pages. I mean, it was huge.
Okay, J.K. Rowling, how long is this thing going to be?
Well, that's what I'm saying. As I had to establish parameters.
Sure,
You're dealing with so many different subjects. You're dealing with so many teams, so many different sports. There's so much stuff you wanted to put. You should have seen the cut room floor when it was all said and done. You're just shaving stuff off. You're like, I want to use it, but I can't. You're under a certain limit for
Willis
stuff you can
was
do.
there, and
Willis was there. And
perfect platform. We get to talk to him.
Exactly. But when I just to mention about Willis Ward, the conflict of him with the Eddie Tolan was that he was outside the scope specifically of Eddie Tolan, which was the parameters. My goal was not to drift into all these other subjects.
Sure.
And so what I did was subjects that I wish that I could have expanded upon more. I would do I would put a couple photos in there, especially if there was a connection like this one. I have a similar photo as the one that's on the screen right now, with Jesse Owens and Eddie Tolan and Willis Ward. I have a different version of that photo in my book. And then maybe a paragraph talking about Willis Ward and encouraging the reader to look up Willis Ward because, and I said at that time, if there's ever any chance that I ever get to expand upon Willis Ward, I will. And today's the day.
Here we are. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and in that being said, like I said, I spent all afternoon kind of getting my research, boning up on my Willis Ward, information.
Yep.
And what I came up with was that his story is really deep. I mean, there's a lot of different coverage on him. He's a significant person, although he's not really well known today. He's a significant star, and the show that we're doing on him today is the best thing we can really do. There's so much, and it goes so deep, and there's so many elements to him that we're just going to do a nice little overview today on him, and then we're just going to encourage. There's a lot of stuff online you can find about Willis Ward, and there's just no way I could fit it into one episode, and I didn't want to. There's so much stuff we're still to cover. You know what I mean, so I wanted to just do one episode on him, do an overview of him. Yeah. So anyway, So just the kind of overview of Willis Ward. I've got a ton of notes. I'm going to go down to.
He went to Michigan, right? But where was he born?
Born in Alabama in 1912. All right. He was part of that sort of Great Migration north, right?
All right. So
just along with Joe Lewis and along with Eddie Tolan and these guys.
Moved to the Detroit area.
Exactly, Detroit specifically.
Okay.
Yeah, his dad, and so they moved up to Detroit. He's the youngest of 7 kids. There's 5 sisters, and he's got a brother and 5 sisters. They moved to Detroit in 1918. Willis's mother dies in 1919 when he's 7 years old.
Dang.
His father remarries in 1920 to a widow who brought 4 sons into the house. So that equals 11 kids in that household. And so then the 4 sons were aged 15 to 22, so they're all older than Willis. But anyways, so he goes to Northwestern High School in Detroit, which is like this, the rival of Cass Tech, and so he's another Detroit high school guy, right? He's another Detroit high school guy, and in Northwestern, Northwestern, just like sort of Cass Tech, these are especially in Detroit, you have these are major, athletic hubs. They're they're dominant
Still
in the region. Yeah, they're dominant in the region for athletics. And so Willis Ward is, spoiler alert, or whatever. Willis Ward is an incredible athlete.
Okay.
Right? And it dates
just
back.
Crushing it in high school.
He's just crushing it in high school. And it's just like.
Yeah, but did he score 6 touchdowns in one game?
He did not do that. But he was a football player. But he was a great football player.
Love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
And so he didn't. I know he's like I scored. He goes. Eddie told him, like, but did you do that? Right? You can almost see him in that picture on the screen saying, "Hey, Willis, you're great and all, but did you do this?" He's like, "No,
Jesse,
I didn't do that."
nice to meet you. Did I ever mention I scored 6 touchdowns in a football game back in high school?
Dude, if I scored 6, I would be saying the same thing. I don't think a day would go by without telling that story, man. You're like, hey, by the way, did you know this? You're like, did you see the number 6 on something or 6 cupcakes on a table or something? You're like, oh, 6 cupcakes. That reminds me. The time I scored 6 touchdowns, I would never get tired of telling that story. Yeah. So anyway, he's a star. He's a massive star in track and field and football, similar to Eddie Tolan. He's a star, and he's potentially even a bigger football star than even Eddie Tolan is. So it's just a kind of a brief synopsis. There's even more than this, but 1929 and 1930, he leads Northwestern State to the Michigan State Class A track and field championships, both in 1929 and 30. So he's a 2-time all-city end on the football field.
Oh, cool.
He's an all-state end in 1930. 1930, he's Michigan High School Athlete of the Year.
Jeez.
1931, he leads Northwestern to ninth straight. This is their 9th straight city track and field title. He's at the same time he sets a world interscholastic high jump record. That was like his really signature event was the high jump.
Yeah.
He was also a tremendous sprinter and everything too. Running like under 10-second 100-yard dashes, that kind of thing. But he's also just this ridiculous leaper. And so even by the end of 1931, he's being called the greatest athlete ever developed in Detroit. Like that's the level he's being being regarded as is the greatest athlete to ever come through the Detroit city.
Do you know what his record was for the high jump?
I've got it down here. The next little segment I'm going to be talking about.
Okay.
Because I've got a nice little ratio to talk about.
I was trying to look it up as to what it is now.
Yeah, we'll get to that in 1 second.
All right.
So but here's what's interesting is that not only was he this tremendous athlete, he's a football player, he's a track and field star. Yeah. He's a big dude too. I don't have his dimensions on here, but he's in all the pictures. He's stout, man. The guy is big. He's a big man, especially for his era.
So he's taller than both.
Yeah, he's and there's other
Jesse
pictures we have too, and he's got broad shoulders. He is just a fantastic physique. I mean, he's not the short like Eddie. Like you can see that. Yeah, there's a track picture of him. He is your prototypical athlete, man.
Yeah, look at him in that starter block.
Muscled up, chiseled granite. So, but what's interesting about him though is that he's an academic as well.
Oh wow,
this is not just some guy, the guy that's just got phenomenal athletic skills and he kind of rides those.
Love that.
He is a phenomenal. He is a highly intelligent individual. And so, in high school, he's nominated for senior class president, but serves as class treasurer instead. Like he's the class treasurer. There was an article that was talking about this where they were saying he owned that school.
I bet.
He owned that school. It. Like he could have done anything he wanted to do in that school.
I'm going to be principal today.
Exactly.
What do you guys think?
They're like, yeah, go ahead.
All right, sure.
You're good. Do it.
You could have the big desk. Go ahead.
Yeah. So he graduates. He graduates from Northwestern at the top of his class.
I love it.
He's the first in his family to go to college.
Nice.
And so this is the sort of at this point there's this dilemma for him that it's like he's about.
I was like, why is there an N on his sweater? Northwestern.
Those are his high school picks.
That's his high school. All right.
Those are high school picks. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So anyways, so there's it's at this point he's trying to figure out which college to go to, and in our day, of course, we're the college is like, oh, what's the best opportunity? You're deciding on which college to go to, which is going to give you the best potential to go to the NFL.
But this was a different time. This was the early 30s.
Yes.
And for an African American young man,
exactly,
coming out of Detroit. Options were more limited. Yeah,
well, exactly. It's like, well, he's a tremendous football. He wants to play football, and that's really the big issue is, This is not mentioned anywhere in any articles that I read, but this is just pure speculation on my part. But Eddie Tolan, who came out of Cass Tech as this tremendous football player, wanted to go to went to U of M. And there's the debate. We covered the debate.
Was it an
in the previous
injury,
episode,
or was it
racism that prevented him from playing football?
Well, plus he was quarterback.
Yeah.
He wanted to be quarterback.
Yeah, he wants to go. I mean, he wants to play football for U of M, and he
Yeah.
played quarterback in high school at Cass Tech, right around the corner. He's a tremendous athlete, and he gets there, and they're like, "No, we just want you to run."
Well,
And so there's a debate about nobody knows exactly what the issue was, and we covered the debate on the previous episode, a couple episodes ago.
Was it racism? Was it an injury?
Exactly. But in either case,
never know.
in either case though, as Willis Ward is looking at this situation, then this is my pure speculation though, is that with the Eddie Tolan at this exact moment is because this is 1931, about to be 32. And Eddie Tolan's well-known. Eddie Tolan had just gone through the whole Cass Tech situation. He's just getting out of U of M, about to run in the Olympics.
Yeah.
And his story about going to U of M would have been well-known to Willis Ward at this moment.
Yeah, that's the success
And so he's
story.
like, here's a guy that went to U of M, and he was a tremendous guy at football playing. This is speculation on my part. This is not like written about in any article. But using the context of what we've discussed previously, it's not that great. That's not that big of a leap of imagination to say
leap.
That's a pun.
Sorry.
Pun intended. Yeah. So it's not. We're not going that far out on a limb to speculate and say that the idea of Eddie Tolan going to U of M and not being able to play football may have weighed heavily on his mind, because initially Willis Ward doesn't go to U of M, which is a natural fit. It's right around the corner.
Yeah.
They have a tremendous track program. Tremendous football team as well. They're a tremendous team. They've been winning national championships like every other year for decades. I mean, this is probably the biggest football program in the country.
Yeah.
And they're right down the street, and so they're so it's an obvious fit. But he's like, well, I'm not going to get a chance to play football in college, and so why would I go there? And so he's talking about. So initially he was going to go to Dartmouth. And so here's so I have an article that does a really good idea or a really good job of summarizing this up. And this is a really highly recommended. There's U of M has done an absolute ton of work on Willis Ward.
Oh, did they really?
U of M. This is because this is what.
So spoiler, he went to U of M.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. Yeah. I just blew the whole episode, and you blew it for pointing it out. I might have been able to skate by about it, but anyways,
rewind.
This is going to be
I'll cut it out in post. This
is going to be what we're about to dive into. Is going to be sort of the crux of the Willis Ward story, which is Willis Ward is basically breaking color barriers at U of M. That's like his real, one of his significance but the thing is as we're going to find out here, especially by the end of his story, he's breaking color barriers, but the legacy is in sort of an open-ended legacy. That's what I'm saying. We're going to get to that point, but
there's so much racism and so much classism
yes.
in this era.
Yes.
Walter Hagen. And it's like, oh, here, go dress in the stable.
Yes. Yes.
And these guys, it's like, you can come to our school, but you're not going to play football. We're going to have you run.
Yeah.
Run. Make running your favorite.
Sure.
It's like, it's crazy. The rampant classism and racism.
But these are topics that are
and I love that he's breaking these barriers.
Yes, but these are topics that, in my opinion, of all this, topics of classism and racism, these are issues that go back throughout the entire course of human history. They go back to the entire course of human history. Like the Romans used to have civil wars over this. They used to, Julius Caesar, they say he was becoming a tyrant. They stabbed him in the back. These are issues that go back throughout human time. That's why they say, like, there's no perfect governments and all this, but there's some are better than others, like the American form of republic. Like that's a whole other thing. But what I'm saying is that this, at least in our American history, this is part of the story of, and really a neglected story of a university that has have to face with its own racism, right? Yeah. It's like I hate talking about the social justice thing too much, but this is an obvious case, and this is a guy who was breaking barriers. However, that being said, we're going to get to the end. When we get to the end of Willis Ward's story, his legacy is a complex one.
Okay.
Right? It's not as clear cut as just a guy who opened doors and did all these things and persevered and did like the most clear cut, if it was a little bit more clear cut, there'd probably be movies made about him all over the place.
Yeah.
But it's not, and that's what I mean. So that's why we're, that's why it's a deep subject, and I want to do an overview and let people kind of view this stuff for themselves.
These things are so perfect for a Netflix special.
It is, but that's what I'm saying. But as long as it's covered the way that it happened,
yes,
and to leave the viewer deciding the legacy for themselves, rather than picking and choosing and cherry picking the best and the most the elements that are stylizing it and making it shaped to fit a narrative or whatever.
Show off warts and all.
Exactly, presenting it for what it is and allowing those. And that's what I want to do today. Really, is to bring it out and let people judge for their own selves.
All right,
so him getting into Michigan is a story unto itself. And in the article.
But he was considering something else because
he was talking about Dartmouth initially because I think that he could have gotten an opportunity to play football there. So there's like I say, U of M has a ton of there's a ton of books written on this.
Right.
There is a ton of articles written on this. There is an entire exhibit on Willis Ward in the Bentley Historical in the museum. There's Bentley Museum at University of Michigan on Willis Ward. Mm-hmm. This is a complex subject for U of M. This is a big subject for U of M, and they have discussed it in great length.
I'm a proud Wolverine.
Are you really?
Yeah.
You went to Michigan?
I did my undergrad.
Oh,
yes.
Did you really? I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you went to State.
No. I got my journalism endorsements later at State.
Oh, did you? That's
and
what
I got
thought.
my master's at Wayne State.
Oh, did you really?
I have lots of sweatshirts.
You're multi.
I got lots of sweatshirts at home.
Yeah, I guess so. That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so Bentley has this. So there's a tremendous work, to accompany the museum at Bentley. Mm-hmm. They have this online exhibit as well, and it's I've seen a lot of online historical exhibits, and they're usually like foo-foo, like just a couple paragraphs about something or other. This one on Willis Ward is deep.
Wow.
I mean, it's in depth, and that's right. There's a lot to it, and it's good. I give a lot of credit to it. It's more of like it focuses a lot more on the social aspect of it than it does like all the huge accomplishments. That's why I was like kind of mashing a few other sources together to actually get the information, but there's a lot of especially when it comes to the racist elements and the barrier breaking and stuff. That's they really dive deep into that.
All right.
So anyways, this comes from this exhibit. Or from this online Bentley exhibit, and it's easily found by just looking up Willis Ward, and and then it'll be like one of the top 3 links. It's like it'll say Bentley, and it's highly encouraged if you want to really dive into it. There's books on Willis Ward.
We'll put the link in.
I think
the
lady
notes.
that was the lead writer for this Bentley exhibit online. I think she's got a book, and it's I think she's got a book titled. I think it's called More Than a Game. I think that the online exhibit is based off of her book.
All right, so we'll have links to that. Yeah, and we'll have links to the exhibit.
So, but the article overall is called More Than a Game, and it's this online Bentley Archives exhibit. So,
all right.
But anyways, so I just want to read like a passage because they do a really good job. I could just try to summarize it, but they do such a great job of discussing the intricacies and the many people that are involved. So I'm just gonna read it. So
okay, yeah.
All right, so Willis Ward was well aware of the rule that African-American students could not play football at Michigan. No African-American had played in a varsity game for Michigan since George Jewett in 1892. U of M athletic director and former coach Fielding Yost, a Southerner by birth and attitude, was determined to keep it that way. Several African-Americans had tried out for the team during Yost's tenure as coach, and although one was awarded a reserve letter, not one was allowed to play in a varsity game. Though the rule was never explicitly stated, it was well known among African-Americans locally and in black communities around the country. Philadelphia Tribune sports editor Randy Dixon summarized the rule in a January 11, 1934 column on the situation at Michigan. They say that old Pop Yost, and this is the quote from the article, they say that old Pop Yost, when he relinquished the reins as grid mentor several years ago, bequeathed as a heritage the slogan, "No Negro shall ever represent Michigan in football."
Yikes.
Yeah, yikes. That's pretty specific.
And the ice arena is named after that guy. Do you think they'll change the name of that?
I don't know,
Yeah.
but it's again, it's not. This is articles they're talking
so,
about.
Dude, not cool.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah. So, anyways, whether or not Yost literally spoke those words, it is unquestionable that a large part of the African American. See, she says it right here. whether or not Yost literally spoke those words, that's the controversy. They don't know for sure.
Sure.
Right?
It is the practice and the proof is there wasn't any.
Yes. But but it also becomes too is how many African Americans were playing high school football. Was Michigan is a superpower juggernaut at this point.
Yes.
They did have a black player as a reserve. If it was 0 black players whatsoever, why would they even have a reserve?
Yeah, but
player?
Eddie 6 touchdowns.
Didn't
get to play.
But Eddie also said he had a knee injury.
Might have been
and he wore a wrap on his knee his entire career. And Eddie never explicitly said it was they wouldn't let him play.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? That was the controversy.
It's hazy.
In the previous.
It's
hazy. That's what I'm saying. So any talk about removing his name and all that would be premature because even this author who the focus of this is she is a very sympathetic writer towards the social justice aspect.
Right.
And even she is saying whether or not Yost literally spoke those words, it is unquestionable that a large part of the African American community and the African American press in particular believe them to be true.
Sure.
And
it's almost it could very well be a self-fulfilling prophecy too. So I'm not going to go to Michigan. I'm not going to try because they won't allow.
Exactly.
And then it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So such racist segregation unquestionably existed in other sports at Michigan.
Yeah.
Dixon's column was spurred by the news that Franklin Lett, an African-American All-State player from Battle Creek, Michigan, had not been allowed to compete on Michigan's freshman basketball team. So there was another sort of situation there, right? So recruiting Ward. So as a high school senior, Ward did not even consider applying to Michigan and was set to enroll at Dartmouth until Marshall Parker, the only African-American clerk employed in the Wayne County Circuit Court, arranged an interview for Ward with Judge Guy Alonzo Miller, a U of M alumnus.
Oh.
Miller had been a star pitcher for U of M in 1895 to 1898 and captain of the 1897 baseball team. He graduated from the literary department in 1898 and the law department in 1900. He was active in Republican politics, served in the Michigan House and Senate, and in 1924 was named to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. On the bench, he was a liberal, particularly in race, and was peripherally involved in the notorious Ossian Sweet case, according to one descendant. Sweet, an African-American physician, and 10 others were charged with murder in 1925 after he and 2 of his brothers and a number of friends used firearms to defend themselves in Sweet's home against a hostile white crowd protesting his family's move into a Detroit neighborhood. And so there's a whole other bit about the case. We'll move on. Miller was interested in Ward's situation and the opportunity it presented and asked Parker, the court clerk, to arrange an interview. Believing nothing would come of it, Ward agreed to meet with the judge, mostly as a favor to Parker. When Ward explained his decision to attend Dartmouth and mentioned Yost's rule, Miller asked, "Well, will you help us break this rule?" Ward agreed.
Nice.
"Will you help us break this rule?" And Ward agreed.
Nice.
So it takes somebody to say, "Let's break the rule."
So yeah,
right? It's an unwritten rule,
and
it's not break. It's etched in granite, and so this is this is what's we're going to keep going here. But this is going to be a signature thing for Willis Ward. This is a big deal. He's breaking the color barrier.
So it was a couple other people motivating him to do this and saying, "Hey, we're behind
support.
you. We got your back. Let's do this." All right.
So Miller then enlisted attorney James Murfin, a U of M regent and former member of the board in control of intercollegiate athletics, and industrialist Fred Mathai, head of the Detroit Alumni Club, to convince coach Harry Kipke to recruit Ward. It didn't take much persuading. Kipke and the football staff certainly would have been aware of Ward through football circles and at the extensive press coverage Ward had received. And the fact that in the previous 2 years he had been the outstanding athlete at the interscholastic track meet held at U of M's Ferry Field. Kipke himself was not opposed to recruiting black athletes. He had played on integrated high school teams in Lansing, Michigan, and in the outfield in 1923 with Rudy Ash, U of M's first black baseball player since brothers Fleet and Weldy Walker in 1882 to 84. When asked if he would play a black athlete, Kipke reportedly responded, "You're darn right I'll take that kid."
Athlete of the year for the state of Michigan. Get him some cleats.
Would ask, he's like, when asked him to play, like, "You're darn right, I'll take him." Kipke went to the Ward home in Detroit and convinced a skeptical Henry, which is his father, that his son would be happy if he came to Michigan to play football, run track, and get an education. Powerful backers, Kipke did have to battle Yost, some of his coaches and alumni who wondered why Michigan needed an African-American player since it had been winning without them. Ward recalled hearing from credible sources that on more than one occasion, in places like the Detroit Athletic Club or alumni gatherings, gatherings, Kipke took his coat off and was prepared to fight with those who bitterly opposed having a Negro play for Michigan. And so,
I think we have
to say it wouldn't be the last time Ward was
another
at the center
hero
of
in this
controversy.
episode too. We got two.
Henry Kipke. Kipke was at Champions Day. He was at the celebration at the Michigan. Kipke. Whenever you're reading these,
cheers to him.
Cheers to Kipke. Yeah, he was awesome. And whenever there's City of Champions talk, they mention the Kipke all the time.
But he was the college football coach at the time.
U of M. Yeah.
How did Michigan do that year?
Well, we're about to find out.
All right.
Just because Willis Ward is joining Michigan.
How's he?
It's funny you should ask.
How did Michigan do in 35? How did they?
Well, we'll get to that. So, so he's.
I want to know how high he jumped.
Yeah.
And I want to know how Michigan did in 35. All right, keep going.
So here, the actual 35 year, I got to queue up because I don't actually have that year because I think it's right outside the boundary of what we're talking about, which is a. Could you take a look at the U of M's record in 35? Because it's actually outside the boundary of what we're talking about.
Okay.
Just by a hair. Yeah.
Was he playing in 35?
I think he played football all the way through 34. So I forgot. I didn't get to 35 on here. I forgot. Michigan didn't do that great in 35. But anyways, when he first comes to U of M, they're awesome. So 31 is he's on the freshman team. But 32 is they qualify that really as his freshman year. But it was like his second year of college eligibility or whatever. It's kind of murky as far as his classification because some people say it's like 31 is his freshman. Anyways, so like his when he goes to U of M, he is regarded as one of the greatest athletes in U of M's history. Okay, it's like. We're just like a lot of this stuff we're just going to have to rip through because there's so. I mean, it's just like there's so much.
Yeah.
But in answer to give you like context about the NCAA, or as far as the high jump record at the time, or like to give you context.
Yeah.
So his freshman year, 1932, on varsity, so he wins the high jump championship with a jump of 6'7.5" And to put that into context, again, 6 foot 7.5 for the high jump. To put that into context, the gold medalist at the 32 Olympics, which was that same year that he was a freshman at Michigan, the gold medalist in 32 Olympics was a Canadian named Duncan McNaughton.
Yeah, and
he jumped 6'5.5".
The current high school record is 7 feet 6 inches.
Jeez, well, they've had 80 years to build on.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying it's not
6 foot. What is it? How far is it?
7 foot 6 inch.
Okay, so they've jumped an extra foot.
Yeah,
about 11 inches.
But that's not too far afield.
Well, what's it going to be another 80 years? They're going to be jumping 8-9 feet.
So, we're going to keep watering.
Like the record's not just going to stay stagnant and never grow,
Watering the grass.
That's kind of what's. I guess that's what's kind of cool about athletics is that people kind of keep pushing the boundaries because their athletic abilities keep getting better and better.
Yeah.
But so anyways, so that's crazy that it's actually gone up a foot, but yeah, what I love what was interesting is that his record is better than the gold medalist at the 32 Olympics. So like he could have potentially been in the Olympics at that exact moment and won the gold medal. Like that's how good he was.
Mm-hmm.
So he does. So as far as play football, Willis Ward is the first black U of M football player since 1890. What'd she say? 93.
Yeah.
He started 4 games at end. And U of M in his first year on varsity wins the national championship with an 8-0 record. They're undefeated, 8-0 record, and they outscored their opponents 123-13. Wow. So they're a dominant team.
Yeah,
in the way that like it isn't just like we started 4 random games. No, he like started like the last 4 games of the year because he'd been like slowly working his way into the lineup and proving himself. And once he got into the starting lineup, he stuck. I mean, this is a freshman on a varsity year. And he's a stud. They're saying he's like, I mean, he's a tremendous, and he's only going to get better. So in 1933, the Associated Press calls Willis a one-man track team because he's just the U of M is just crushing at track and everything. Yeah. So the U of M wins the indoor and outdoor Big Ten championships. Behind Willis Ward and all these points he's getting and all this. What's it? Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, so there's there's just lists of all the different events he's winning. Time he starts to get a ton of national coverage. There's a couple different Time magazine articles that talk about him. One of them, they talk about that he is not only they're just listing off his achievements in Time Magazine, saying there's this new guy in town, he's awesome. But another thing that happens in 1933, which is especially worth mentioning, is that there's an honor society called it was at the time it was called the Sphinx Junior Honor Society.
Yeah.
And it was it's like, I mean, you have to be like nominated for it and all this. It's an academic thing. And he's the first black man inducted into that gets into the Sphinx Honor Society. So this is a guy who's intelligent as well. He's not just a pure athlete.
Right.
And that's I think one of my favorite elements of him, especially when we're going to talk about like his post athletic career, because this guy goes on to some big things.
So who played center for Michigan?
Yeah,
in 1933? Are you getting there?
Yeah. Well,
right.
You can mention him right
Go
now.
ahead.
Yeah, Gerald Ford, future
Gerald
president.
Ford.
Yeah.
He was in 1933. He was the center. President Ford.
Yeah. I had a great picture I was going to send you,
Gerald
but I just
Ford.
didn't put it. You can find some pictures online of him. He's a great. There's some great shots of him. Especially when you see him, like, a lot of us remember him as the president, but when you look at him as the UofM football player, he's a beast.
Right.
He's like he looks mean, man.
I know.
So, anyways, yeah. So, Big Ten championships. Time Magazine's mentioned him. This guy's growing into national presence. So in 1933, he starts all 8 games of the UofM football. And in the UofM wins their second consecutive national championship and also an undefeated season again. So 2 years in a row, undefeated and national championships. And so anyway, I just want to mention too, if we're talking about Gerald Ford, he was a beast in that time, but the beast of all beasts is Chuck Bernard.
Oh.
And that's another guy. At some point, I want to do a dive into him. I want to do a deep dive into Chuck Bernard like we're doing a Willis Ward today. Because Chuck Bernard was for the center. He was the center. And Chuck Bernard is one of the greatest, and he's one of the greatest college football players of all time. Chuck Bernard is a friggin' monster. And he was the center. Because he ended up signing with the Lions in 1934. He was their first big college recruit signing.
Yeah.
Chuck Bernard signed with the Lions in 1934. When they first came to Detroit, Chuck Bernard was a center for the Lions, and he was that guy. When we get to him, he was a beast, and he was an important guy because he's like a first overall draft pick is today. He's like this major figure. He's the center of the undefeated Wolverines who just won. He was the center for 2 straight, undefeated national championships, and he was a superpower. Willis Ward was awesome, but Chuck Bernard was a monster. He was one of the greatest of all time.
So it's people listening to the audio podcast, you miss out on some of the stuff we do as we stream it onto Facebook and YouTube. The videos, that's Gerald Ford.
Yeah.
That's Gerald Ford there at center for Michigan.
But even Gerald Ford's but even Gerald 33. But even Gerald Ford's dude, Chuck Bernard was a beast.
Yeah.
Chuck Bernard was a beast, man. Gerald Ford. I think Gerald Ford was a bit of an understudy for Chuck Bernard until Bernard left, and then he was a full-time center. But because Chuck Bernard was a monster, and we're gonna get to him at some point. But he was but when he went sign with the Lions, it was a major deal because they were there's this new team coming to Detroit, and Chuck Bernard was incredibly well known to all the UofM fans and faithful and all this because he was such a star. And then they're Chuck Bernard signed with the new Detroit football team. That was a major get for them. Anyways, so Chuck Bernard is part of this team as well. He's a beast. And so again, second straight undefeated season. In this case, Willis Ward is an honorable mention All-American at end. So he's a major contributor as well at this. So honorable mention All-American end. And then so he finishes up the Willis Ward does in 1933.
Real quick though, Chuck Bernard.
There he is. Yeah, that's my guy right there. I love Chuck Bernard.
27.
I've met his son too.
I've
met his son. Yeah, Chuck Bernard Jr.
That's
talked to him quite a few times.
27 is my number.
Is it really?
Mm-hmm. That was my number, my scroll number in the fraternity.
Yeah. So he's
anyway.
Willis Ward is honorable mention All-American at end, and then the other end, I forgot his name. I didn't write his name down, but the other end was a straight up All-American. Right. So they have an All-American at one end. They have an All-American at one end. They have an All-American, an honorable mention All-American at the other end. And I know that Chuck Bernard was an All-American center. I mean, they had All-Americans up and down that team. It was just a beast. Those couple of years of UofM football, it's really worth your time to look up because they had some absolute studs. There's a guy named Everhardus. He was a back. He was a stud for them too. Yep. But anyways, And then in 1933, Willis Ward is the Big Ten Athlete of the Year. He loses. He's second only by a couple of points. So there's 55 total votes, and Willis Ward gets 50. So he gets second place with 15. The first guy, his name is Dwayne Purvis of Purdue. He gets number one with 17 votes.
Oh wow, that's close.
So he gets 17, and I didn't even look up Dwayne Purvis, but he had to have a crazy year too in order to beat out Willis Ward, because Willis Ward is like setting records and doing all this and playing football as an All-American end.
Yeah.
So Dwayne Purvis, and I've heard his name before. I can't place his exact accomplishments. But anyways, so he wins. He's second for the Associated Press Big Ten Athlete of the Year in 1933. And then in 1934, which is I guess technically his junior year, he is just winning races like it's going on his style. Like he swept the 60-yard dash, high hurdles, high jump in five indoor meets. And he does the same in those same races. He sweeps all those events in the Big Ten Conference Championship. And then that was the indoor championship. And then there was an outdoor championship in which he wins half the events, but then like pulls a muscle in one of it, and pulls a muscle and like doesn't finish the other ones. But but the only problem is that football, their football team has a 1-7 record. Like a lot of these guys were gone. Like Chuck Bernard was gone at this point. And a lot of these other studs had like gone to the NFL or whatever. So UofM has a regression in their football team, but this 1934 this is a major pivot for like the rest of Willis Ward's story.
We're going to pivot right here as well and take a pause. We're going to pick this back up. More about Willis Ward and how this turn happens here in 34 for him. What is the turn? Where's this story going? What happens to Willis after this? A lot more to investigate, a lot more to talk about, a lot more to explore. Willis Ward, it's Detroit City of Champions, the podcast. Thank you so much for being with us. Charles and I cannot thank you enough for the time that you take to listen to these episodes. You can do us a massive favor by just subscribing or liking, telling a friend. Any one of those things is just perfectly gold to us. DetroitCityOfChampions.com, the website. WearingFunny.com. You can get the merch at both of those places. And say hi to us. That's always a fun thing to do too. Say hi anytime. Leave a comment and we'll get back to you. Guaranteed. There he goes. Detroit City of Champions, the podcast.